Hello, my name is Adam Mills. I'm a cycling coach and exercise physiologist, and today we're going to talk about saving your season. First, let's talk about procrastination and training and how many of us tend to try and wait a little bit too long. We're going to call that procrastination. But where do we differentiate between procrastination and irresponsibility? So procrastination is typically a disservice to yourself, something like handing in a paper late or paying a bill late or mowing the lawn late. Emphasis on late. However, irresponsibility tends to harm others. But with training, procrastinating too much becomes irresponsibility to yourself because getting back in shape is very, very painful. We're going to talk about Rick in this case study. Rick is not his real name. It's a totally fictional name of a real person. Rick is not lazy, nor does he shy away from hard workouts. Rick is incredibly hardworking. He's a hard-nosed athlete that's committed to improving and wants to do the work to get there. That's why he hired us at Source Endurance, and that's why he trusted us to get him through all this off-season turmoil. I would say Rick has had about 10 years of bad luck all at once, all in the span of one off-season. Rick has been sick. He crashed. He changed jobs. He got sick again. He moved. He got sick again. Not necessarily in that order, but you kind of get the idea. What was supposed to be the solid start of a great 2018 season ended up being a frustrating series of unfortunate fitness events. Here is the performance management chart of Rick's off-season. Notice the chronic training load in teal and the chronic intensity load in blue. Following the final event of the year, which is the far left edge of the chart, Rick kind of was able to hold on to his fitness, more or less, as you see it here, and then it kind of drops off and gets ugly. And then we have a recovery towards the far right side. So that's more recent. Also note the deflections of the ATL and the training stress balance. So ATL, acute training load, training stress balance, and the dots are top 10 performances in 1 minute, 5 minute, 20 minute, and 60 minute efforts. Here I've highlighted a few points in Rick's off-season. First is you have an epic group ride right here. That's why you have your vertical stacking of these top 10 performances. Then you have his first illness. So from the training stress balance being negative, sloping positive, he was a little sick, did a late season race, kind of pulled it all back together for a late season race in early October. Got sick again. This one kind of bit him for a while. It's this yellow one right here, this big yellow section. Rick was then able to get well, start doing some training. I would call this his false start to his season. He got sick again, right about here, got injured, and that brings him to about this point. Had a few days of training and got sick yet again, and that got him to the present day, present day being February. In February, Rick and I had this talk and talked about resetting his expectations, talking about if his goals were in jeopardy and could he turn around his season and be successful. So I gave him a challenge. I said, we need 10 weeks of solid training. You're going to have to stay healthy the entire time. The training is going to be tough. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to get through it. We're going to really be aggressive with training prescription. And some keys to success in this process, this very, very aggressive, intense process. First is communication. So we've profiled an athlete like Rick, and myself and the coaches at Source Endurance were able to employ evidence-based practice to accurately predict and quantify expected training load that an athlete like Rick could absorb. Rick and I also did weekly video consults with follow-up emails on a weekly basis, where during these video consults, we would review each training file via screen share and discuss it and talk about how did these efforts feel, how did you feel on the day, and it let me monitor Rick's training and adjust it subtly. I'm not even sure if he noticed some of it when it would happen, by adding rest and extending interval sets, things like that. Next key to success, high intensity interval training or HIIT training and group rides. So cycling should be fun. Group rides are fun and they keep you sharp. So we like to incorporate them when it makes sense. High intensity training is a key component to improving quickly. However, too much high intensity training kind of puts you over the edge and have you overreach too fast, too early. We still have to have lots of HIIT training in his exercise prescription because we only have about 10 weeks and we got to get as much as we can out of an athlete like Rick. So for 10 weeks, Rick was able to kind of ride that edge between fitness and increasing ability versus the abyss you fall into when you overreach too hard. We had lots of short breaks, and when you view the zoomed in performance management chart, which we'll get to, just notice the acute training load and training stress balance and how it kind of seesaws pretty quickly. But also the corresponding CTL will be upsloped. Rick needed recovery from all these microcycles of training. How intense were these microcycles? Well, to give you an idea, this is a chart that looks at time over 90% of threshold and time over 105% of threshold, represented by this bar graph. Rick was able to train at about 19% of his total volume at over 90% of his FTP for 10 weeks. That's incredible. That's very, very difficult. And of that, 71% of that time was spent over 105% of his FTP. So Rick did a lot of high intensity training and a lot of really hard group rides. Which brings us to the next point or key to success, resting. You train hard, you got to rest harder. Many athletes ride too hard on their easy days and can't ride hard enough on the hard days. I tell them, hey, don't worry. You'll know when you're training hard. There will be absolutely no doubt in your mind when that happens. So we're going to look at measuring progress and outcomes for Rick. We're going to look at the outline section on the far right. First, notice all those dots, all those top 10 performances and how they're all clustered on the far right. Second, notice the CTL upsloping in teal and the chronic intensity load in the blue upsloping. And then it really makes a jump towards the far right around here. So here's the zoom in. Training stress balance, again, is negative for most of the time because we're really pushing Rick to get as much as he can out of himself. Acute training load in the purple is on a steep rise, actually it's pretty steep. Kind of the sawtooth effect gives you this kind of cycling of where his microcycles were. And that results in a ramp rate of 4 to 6 per day. Now, normally I would say that's severe. However, given that we're so far below Rick's absolute ability for fitness, having these more severe ramp rates is acceptable for a short amount of time. And so that's where we are. This is 10 weeks. This is a lot of work that Rick's been doing. Also note on the far right, all these 5-minute peaks over here. That clustering is important because it's showing that Rick has this very much improved ability and VO2 ability, which is kind of what we want to see right as he's getting ready to hit his big event of the year, his first big event at least. So Rick did step up. Rick has risen to the challenge. In the last 10 weeks, he's put together consistent training at a high level while managing good communication so that we don't overreach him. In the process, Rick has accrued an immense amount of high-intensity training and is now reaping the benefit of having similar, if not superior, fitness to any point in 2017, so last season. So congratulations, Rick. In my mind and by all these metrics, you have indeed saved your season. So do you need your season saved? So you can save your season with Source Endurance. We have this promo going on right now. You paid a startup fee, cancel whenever you want, but beginning after the 6th month, so beginning on the 7th month, we're going to rebate that fee back to you until you get it all back. So that at the end of the day, you don't have a startup fee. There's a link right there. Start saving your season now. If you have any questions, on the bottom right, there's an email. Just give us a shout, and we'll get someone to have a chat. All right. Thanks a lot.